What we're going to do is continue with this summer packet. This is part 2, where we're going to look at GCF and LCM, and we're going to look at exponents. So with GCF, what we're doing is we're talking about the greatest common factor, and LCM is the least common multiple. This is referred to a lot in junior high math. What we're going to be doing is getting ready for factoring and finding common denominators. So with the GCF, the greatest common factor, we have two numbers, 15 and 20, and we're trying to figure out the largest number that goes into both of these, and that would be 5, because 15 is 3 and 5, and 20 is 4 and 5. So they both have a 5, and that would be the greatest common factor. Now, if we're looking at 18x and 45x squared, 18, what we have is 9 and 2. 45 is 9 and 5. They both have a 9. That's why we have a 9 here. This has 1x. This one has 2 x's. So x squared would be x times x. They each have 1x. So that's why the greatest common factor is 9x. So looking at letter A, 2 and 6, they both have a 2 in common. That would be the greatest common factor. For letter D, 5x and 10x, they both have a 5 in common, and they both have an x in common. So it would be 5x. Now, what we're going to look at next is factoring using the GCF, greatest common factor. So we're looking at two terms. We see what they have in common, and in this case, they have a 2 in common. Now, factoring is like dividing. So if we were to divide this by 2, we get x. If we divide 4 by 2, we get 2. That's why it's x plus 2. So when we're looking at 5x minus 10, they both have a 5 in common. And then if we divide each of these by 5, we have an x minus 2. Now let's skip over to letter E. We have a 3, a 27, and a 6, and each of them have a 3 in common. This is an x cubed, x squared, and an x, so they each have an x in common. Now, after we find the greatest common factor, what we're doing is we're taking each of the terms and we're dividing them by 3x. That's, in this case, x squared. And for the second term, when we divide it by 3x, what we have is negative 9x. And for the last one, when we divide it by 3x, the x's cancel. 6 divided by 3 gives us 2. So let's move to the LCM. The LCM is the least common multiple. That is the smallest number that both of them go into. This is used for finding a common denominator. So 5 and 10, they both go into 10. 7x, 6x and 7x, 6 and 7 would be 42, and then x and x would be just x. So when we're looking at 3 and 4, think of the multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12. Multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12. Notice that the first one that they have in common would be the 12. So that's why it's the least common multiple. Now, if we're looking at 4x and 6x, we know that they both have an x in common. That's pretty easy to figure out. 4 is 4, 8, 12. 6 is 6 and 12. Notice that the first number that they have in common is a 12. So 12x would be our answer. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at exponents. The first property that we're going to look for exponents is the product property. Product property is that when we multiply, we add the exponents. So 2 to the third is 3 2's multiplied together. 2 to the fourth is 4 2's multiplied together. And if we were to count the 2's, what we would do is we would count 7 2's. So that would be 2 to the 7th. The main thing I want to point out here is notice that the base stays the same. A lot of students, when they're doing this, they want to put 4 to the 7th. But we're not counting 4's, we're counting 2's. That's why it's 2 to the 7th, and 2 to the 7th is 128. So looking at letter A, 3 to the second times 3 to the second is 3 to the fourth. Once again, it's not 9 to the fourth. We're not counting 9's, we're counting 3's. 3 to the fourth is 81. Now, if we skip over to letter C, 2 times 3 is 6. And then what we do is we count the x's. 2 x's, 7 x's is 9 x's. The second one that we have is the power property. With the power property, what we're doing is we're raising an exponent to an exponent. So that would be 2. 3 times 3 gives us 9. And then 2 to the 9th, that's kind of a tough one. That would be 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2 and 2. So what I'm going to do is break it up into 2s. That would be 8 and 3 2s. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8 again. And then what we have is 8 again. So 8 times 8 is 64. And then if I multiply it by 8 again, 8 times 4 is 32. Then I have 48, 49, 50, 51. So I have 512. So looking at the next one, x to the 4th raised to the 5th would be x to the 20th. Now, if you're wondering, how did I get 20? If we look back at our previous example, 2 to the 3rd, and we do that, raise that to the 4th, 2 to the 3rd is 3 2s. And if there's 4 groups of them, notice that 4 times 3 gives us 2 to the 12th. So for the next one, this is a little tricky. We have 2 squared, and then we have x to the, we multiply them, get 14. 2 squared is 4, so 4x to the 14th. And then for letter D, we distribute the 6 to each of them, so that would be x to the 6th, and then y to the 12th.